Okay, where are we in this story? In the story of 2 Kings, where are we? What in a nutshell? What have we kind of passed through, and where are we now?
Elijah and Elisha.
Okay, we've gone through the Elijah and Elisha stories, and who comes first? Elijah. And Elijah, great prophet. Who was, if Elijah is kind of protagonist, is the hero of a big piece of the story, who is the antagonist to Elijah? Not Shah, but Jah. Who is on the other side? Who is against him? If you've got, kind of the hero versus the villain, if Elijah is the hero because he represents God, who's on the other side?
Jehoshaphat?
Well, Jehoshaphat is in the story, but Jehoshaphat, in fact, is good. Jehoshaphat is a good king, and he's the king of Judah. He's the king of Judah, and most of what Elijah and Elisha, what they do is up north in Israel. And Judah kind of comes in and goes out. It'll be more in the story from this point on. But it's not, the Elisha and Shah stories have more to do with the north. So who's the antagonist? What's that? Ahab. Yeah, Ahab is the antagonist. He's the king. He and Elijah kind of go at one another, and Ahab is sort of in a team. He's kind of got it's sort of a tag team with Ahab. Who is with him? Jezebel. So you got Ahab and Jezebel on one side and Elijah on the other. And the God of Elijah is the Lord, and the God of Ahab and Jezebel is Baal. Okay, so we've got the difference pretty clear. Now, but that was a while ago, right? What happened to now? Ahab is cursed, right? God says that Ahab is not going to, his family isn't going to continue, right? Because when Elijah is still alive, God says to Elijah, there are 3 things I want you to do. And you remember those 3 things that God says to Elijah, I want you to do before you expire.
He's going to appoint the king.
Okay, he's going to, in fact, appoint 2 kings, right? So he's going to appoint 2 kings. Who are the 2 kings?
King of Aram.
Okay, Aram is going to be Hazael, is going to be king. He's going to anoint him. Who else is he going to anoint king? Jehu. He's going to anoint king. So as king, so we got 2 of them. What's the other? The third thing he's going to do that God says you are going to do. Going to anoint Elijah. Shah. And which during Elijah's life, that's really the only thing he does of the 3. He anoints Elisha, and Elisha is the prophet who will sort of carry on. He's the heir of Elijah. And that's who we've been looking at for a couple of weeks. Because when you look at the Elisha stories, a lot of stuff goes on, right? And how does Elisha kind of connect with the assignment given to Elijah? What does Elisha do?
He has to be blessed with Elijah's.
Okay, he's blessed, receives double portion because that's what he asked for. So, which is the inheritance of the firstborn son. So he is carrying on Elijah's work, which we would expect him then to fulfill the task given to Elijah, right? And has he done that? Well, he's done 1. That's right. So we got 2 left, and he's done 1. And what is it that he's done? Which of the two? Because we got Hazael of Aram and Jehu of Israel. Which one of the two kings, which one has he anointed?
Hazael.
Okay, Hazael. Okay, now Hazael Aram. Now, what's the situation between the country of Aram and Israel? What happens? What's going on? And there are a lot of stories. But what's the relationship between Israel and Aram?
They're warring.
Constant warfare. And Hazael as king is constantly at war with Joram because Ahab is dead, so his son is king. And so, but constant warfare, still in the same family, the Omri dynasty in Israel. And but just constant warfare between the two. Okay, last week when we came to kind of a conclusion, what was the situation on the ground? What was the situation between Israel and Aram at the end of what we looked at last week? What was Joram's condition? What was his situation? Because you could just throw a dart, it's going to have to do with war. What's Joram?
He was wounded.
Okay, he was wounded, and he's recovering from his wounds. Okay. Now, as we enter chapter 9, so that's what we've got sort of lurking in the background. Now, in a broader sense, who is driving this story? God is driving the story. So, and that's the writer's perspective. If he were going to look at it as a pure historian, he'd be talking about political issues and military issues between the two. But the writer here really isn't doing that. He's looking at this as God's story. God is the one that's sort of in control. Therefore, if Israel suffers, that must mean Israel has done something to deserve suffering. So everything is sort of has its moral component to it. That if you were dealing with pure politics or military, you wouldn't necessarily integrate into it. But the writer does. This is a theological story. So when we get to chapter 9, who appears at the beginning of chapter 9?
Elisha.
Okay, Elisha is there. And Elisha is with these prophets. And we've seen the prophets before, this group of prophets. They're kind of unidentified in terms of individuals. They're just sort of there. But they always play a positive role in the story. I mean, these aren't false prophets. They're just kind of there like a chorus that's sort of in the background. And what does he tell as he's with these? What does he tell one particular prophet to do? Because remember, with Elijah, we've still got one string that hasn't been tied up yet. And what does he tell the prophet to do?
Go put oil.
Okay, he's going to send the prophet to whom?
To
Jehu.
Yeah.
He's going to send him to Jehu and with a flask of oil that he's going to pour on his head. Now, what is being described when you got a flask of oil being poured on the head?
Pull his cloak up and do it, and then he takes him into a room by himself.
Okay, well, what is happening there?
It's anointed.
He's being anointed. And who do you anoint?
Kings.
Kings. You anoint kings. You also anoint priests. But same process. But you anoint kings. That's why in Greek, the word for pour, anoint, is chrisma. Therefore, the one who is anointed with oil is called Christus. Is called the Christus, the Christ, because he had the oil poured on him. And that's why when you read that, like in the second Psalm, that's what kings are called, Christus. That's just what they are. Okay, so this Jehu is going to be anointed, and therefore he's going to be king. And what does the young prophet do?
He does what he
Okay, he does what he's assigned. And what is Jehu's context when the young prophet meets him?
He's with a group of his country.
Okay, he's with a group of his countrymen. Now, what does it appear as though that group is? what kind of gathering is this? With Jehu, with these countrymen, what are they?
Army.
What's that?
They're military.
They're military people. This is a military group, right? And the young prophet says to Jehu, come on with me, I'm going to take you aside, pours the oil on him, anointed. And what assignment does Jehu have? Because he's given an assignment.
Destroy the house of Ahab.
Yeah, and this is from, the assignment is communicated by this young man, but it's not coming from him. It's coming from God, the Lord. And this is the assignment. And what is the assignment?
To destroy the house of Ahab.
You're going to destroy the house of Ahab. And in particular, you're going to destroy the house of Ahab, and you're going to get Jezebel. And that's going to include Jezebel. She's going to expire too. Now, what then is going to happen to this dynasty? Because remember, where Ahab is gone, and you get rid of the son, or Jezebel, you still have other people in that house. What's going to end up happening to this entire house?
Destroyed.
It's going to be absolutely destroyed, and Jezebel is going to be eaten by dogs.
Ooh, okay.
You said that. You know what she did? She went like this. Like, I didn't realize that was possible. Yes. Jezebel's going to be eaten by dogs that look like that. Okay, so, and why is this, and so he gets this assignment, then what happens? After Jehu gets this assignment, what happens?
The prophet runs.
Yeah, the prophet leaves, and he goes back to the group, and the group say, yeah, what's going on? And he says, just as soon not talk about it. And they say, come on, you got to tell us. And he says,
He tells them.
yeah, I was anointed by this guy with oil. And this is what I was told. And what does this little group then do when they hear?
Cloaks down on.
They lay their cloaks on the ground, and they say,
Jehu
is now king. So now who's in control of this? The Lord has done all of this. This is all set up by the Lord. If we take him out, what has occurred here?
It's like a military.
We got a military coup. We got the military, which, when you look at the context, makes sense because they're in constant warfare with Aram, and the warfare is not, we're going to find out later, is not going well. And the king, the leader, is seriously wounded enough that he can't lead the army. So what we end up with is this little military coup, but the writer wants to make sure we, the reader, know that this is not instigated by these guys. It's instigated by God. God is in control of this. Okay, so after the prophet leaves, what does Jehu do? After the prophet's gone and the people recognize him as king, then what does he decide he's going to do?
Kill him.
He's going to go see the king, right? Who is not mortally wounded. He's wounded. And he's there, and Jezreel, and who is with him? Because the king isn't alone. Who's there with him? Okay, good. Ahaziah from Judah is there, right? So there, and remember, Judah is probably a client state of Israel. Israel stronger. Ahaziah has been fighting with Jehu against the Arameans, so he is there. And what happens as Jehu approaches?
There's a man standing on a tower.
Yeah, we get this weird little thing. Jehu is coming, evidently he's not coming alone, and the king says,
Like what he wants.
which is natural, send a guy out, is he coming in peace? Or this does not look good. And sends one guy out, and Jehu says,
What do you have to do with it?
Yeah, sort of kind of blows him off a little bit. Sends another guy out and same response. And then what does the king Joram do?
Told his men to fall in behind him.
Yeah, well, Joram the king does what? He goes out because it's the two messengers. He tells fall behind me because I'm loaded for bear. I'm coming after. I'm here. So the king comes out. In fact, both kings come out, and what do they do? Why does the king come out?
Because he couldn't get an answer.
Yeah, couldn't get an answer. The king wants information. Now, it's really interesting. Where is this taking place? Because this becomes kind of significant.
The plot ground belonged to Naboth.
That's right, Naboth.
Stole.
Yes, and that's the one Ahab stole. Well, kind of.
Jezebel.
Yeah, Jezebel kind of stole it. But Ahab didn't object. So this was the kind of land that was this vineyard that was stolen. So what's happening on this land? And so the king comes out and asks Jehu, why are you here? Is it peaceful or is it not? And what response does the king get?
What does he know of peace?
Yeah, okay, what does he know of peace? And then Jehu says,
As long as all the idolatry and witchcraft of your mother Jezebel.
yeah, that your mom has caused a lot of problems. Now, Joram then knows what?
That's true.
This is not going to come out well. It is not going to come out well. So what does Joram do?
He fled.
He fled.
He takes off in his chariot, right? And what does Jehu do?
He hollers.
Well, he hollers and then he does what? He gets his bow and arrow, loads it, shoots it. What happens?
Kills him.
Right to the heart. Shoots Joram right to the heart. Now Joram is not recovering from his injuries, battle injuries anymore. Joram is dead. And what does Jehu say after he's killed the king? Because he's killed the king.
Pick him up and throw him on the field.
Yeah, throw him on the field because...
It was Naboth's.
Yeah, Naboth's field, that this is sort of a revenge for what his father had done with this field. Now, Ahaziah gets the idea that this is not a good time to hang around, right? So what does he do? He takes off too. And what happens to him?
They chase him, saying, kill him.
They chase him, they say kill him. What happens?
They wounded him.
They chase him, they shoot him, and what eventually happens?
Dies.
He ends up dying as he's trying to make it back home, to get away. So the two kings are dead. Jehu has assassinated two kings, right? This is a coup. This is a military coup. All right, we still got a person we hadn't talked about for a while, who is in Jezreel. And who's in Jezreel? Jezebel is in Jezreel, and she is sort of now the queen mother. And so Jehu is going to do what? Because part of his assignment was not just kill Joram, but to get rid of Jezebel. So what does he do? Okay, he goes to Jezreel, right? And Jezebel is there, and how does the writer describe what happens when he gets there?
She puts on her makeup.
She puts on her makeup. She puts on her makeup, fixes her hair, right? Why are you laughing, Patty? I'm thinking this is my wife.
I thought you said it was Pat.
Yeah, well, it may be, but I know this is my Debbie. If a king is going after her, she's going to say, wait. Wait, that's right. But This is I find this a really interesting way of presenting Jezebel, because she gets she wants to look right, and then when Jehu's there, what does she say to him?
Ask him if he come in peace.
Well, she asks him if he comes to peace, but what else does she say? She doesn't just ask if he came in peace.
She calls him a murderer in my house.
Yeah, he calls him the murderer of the master and calls him Zimri. Now, do you remember Zimri? I bet you don't, because it's almost like a footnote, but he's played a role in the story. Zimri was remember, Israel had a lot of coups. Dynasties were coming and going. In the dynasty of Baasha, there was a king called Elah, and Zimri overthrew Elah, but Zimri was he overthrew his king, but he was only king for 7 days before Omri, the father of Ahab, overthrew him. So when she calls him Zimri, that's really a sarcastic remark. She calls him the name of a guy who killed his master, betrayed his king, committed treason, which is what Jehu has done. He's committed treason here. He's overthrown his master to whom he's pledged allegiance, but he's overthrown him anyway. And she associates him with this guy who did the same thing and was king for 7 days before he fell.
Oh, wow.
This is and I find it interesting. And like it's after that you murdered your master, that you're a murderer, which is what Zimri did, only he got overthrown 7 days later, which is kind of a real dig at him. In some ways, I find Jezebel really interesting here, because she's not hiding, in a closet. She knows what's happening. She knows what's going to happen to her. But she's not hiding. She's confronting this guy, looking like a queen, with sarcasm. I don't know what to make of Jezebel here, for me personally.
If she's going to go out, she wants to look good.
Yeah. I mean, this is, we've had kings running away. A lot of kings running away. She ain't running away. She's face to face.
And if she's gonna die, she wants to look the best she
Well,
can,
I find it really interesting that the writer of the story, because she is no question sort of the epitome of evil, and yet the writer gives her some strength in this. That she's facing her death on her terms. She is not pleading for her life. The one that's going to kill her. She's looking at eye to eye and saying, you're a murderer. And your destiny is just like this guy who was murdered 7 days after he did it. Wow. That's a gutsy person. I find that kind of gutsy. What ends up happening to her, though? Yeah, because she's upstairs. He appeals to her servants, and servants were eunuchs because you could trust them in a harem. And what does he say? Jehu say to her servants? Yeah, boy, you should be able to see what side of bread the bread is buttered on. Your future is not going to be with her. Your future is with me. So if you know what you're doing, I toss her out the window. And what do? Toss her out the window. And what happens to her? Oh, such a gentle. The writer is so gentle, because he knows he's writing this. The children will be reading this story, right? So he wants to be delicate. She falls out the window, and what happens to her? I think you could say, use the word legitimately here, splat.
Yeah.
Splat, because the blood goes.
So descriptive.
Yes, everywhere.
Yes.
Splatters everywhere. And she's there on the concrete, splat. And when he says, we got to bring her in. We got to do something with her. And they go to get her body. What do they find?
Her skull, her feet, and her hands.
Yeah, her skull, feet, and hands. Why is that it?
Because the
The
dog.
dogs
ate
been
eating her.
The dogs ate her like Coco eats treats. So the dogs have eaten her, and what has then been fulfilled?
The prophet, or the word.
The word of the Lord. So why does all this is a really graphic and yucky story.
Maybe they did it because she was so evil. They wanted to make sure you understood she didn't have a nice death.
Oh, absolutely. That's absolutely. But who made sure?
The Lord.
The Lord made sure she had a harsh death, and to be eaten by dogs, because dogs were viewed in a different way. I'm sorry. Back then, so this was not a good way. This was not a good way to go. All right, so we've got Jezebel. Then is done, but we've still got a lot of Ahab's family running around, right? So if Jehu's going to take power, what does he need to do? If he's going to be the new king of Israel, what does he need to do?
Just follow it.
Yeah, he needs to get rid of everybody who are potential competitors for the throne, right? Because this is a coup. And how many competitors does he see? How many are there? 70. Okay, we got 70 sons of Ahab there. And so what does Jehu have to do?
You said he had 70 sons?
That's what it says.
How did he ever accomplish anything else?
Well,
In the house of Ahab.
in the house of Ahab.
They weren't all Ahab,
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah. But we also have harems.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of wives. And that was, that's what you needed. The population, I've said before, one of the things with the population in the ancient world, it's level. It's not growing. Population isn't growing. As many people are coming in as going out. Infant mortality is incredibly high. And maternal mortality, women bearing children, is really, really high. And so you needed to have a lot of kids being produced to keep your population stable. And they produced a lot of kids because most of them didn't survive. But here we've got 70. Now 70 is a loaded number. That's another one of those numbers you run into. It wasn't 72, it was 70. Because 70 is recognized as kind of a special number. And so what is he going to have to, how does he deal with these 70 people in potential competitors? The house of Ahab who would compete with him for power, could compete with him for power.
He wants him to pick the best and fight with him.
Yeah,
Fight for
and
the master's
how does he approach this? So he calls them together, right? Gets them together. And then what does he do? Which is another very cheerful story, but reflects what you have to do. If you're gonna be king, you got to deal with this. And how does he deal with these 70?
His leaders of Jezreel behead them.
Yeah, he doesn't do it himself. And it's interesting as he approaches this official in Jezreel. What is Jehu doing outside of demanding this death? What is he? Why does he do this? What is he doing when he gives this command? In practical terms, what is he?
He's showing his.
He's showing his power. He's showing his power. In particular, his power over this guy. He's testing his power, because if this guy does it, then he's got power. More so than, because this official is a servant of, this is still a coup going on. This is still a rebellion. This is treason. And he's demanding that the servant commit treason by betraying the family to whom he's dedicated. And does the servant do it? Does the official do it? You betcha. What does he do?
Cut them down with swords.
He cuts them down with swords and does what with them?
Puts their heads in the basket.
Cuts their heads off, puts them in baskets, and does what with them?
Sends it to Jehu.
Sends it to Jehu, and Jehu does what with them?
Puts them in 2 piles at the entrance of the city gate.
Uh-huh.
The next morning.
Why would he do that? Why would he put the heads of the children of the members, these 70 members of the house of Ahab? Why would he put the heads at the city gates?
So everyone else could see what had happened.
That's exactly right. And what message is Jehu communicating?
That he's in charge.
Yeah, you want to be the 71st head? You don't mess with me. That's why Jesus was crucified on a hill outside of Jerusalem. Because that's what the Romans did. You crucified somebody at the gate of the city. Why would you crucify somebody at the gate of the city? Everybody who comes in and goes out sees it. And if you mess with Rome, there's plenty of crosses. There'll be a cross for you. Remember when Nero, after Rome burned, the Spartacus rebellion, they crucified 7,000 slaves on the road going into Rome. Right on the road. So everybody going in the city saw it. Everybody leaving the city saw it. And they left them up as long as they could. Because you mess with Rome, bad things are going to happen. You mess with Jehu, bad things are going to happen. So, what is Jehu doing? On a practical sense, he's consolidating power. He's consolidating his power. He rebelled against the king. He's got to consolidate his power. But who's still in charge of this story? God is. All of this is kind of pushing. Now, he also has to deal with, because if Judah is a client kingdom, and they've been associated with the family of Ahab, Joram, how might Judah interpret what's happening in Israel? What might Judah decide to do, given what's happening in Israel?
Recognize his kingship.
Well, they sure could. They could, on the other hand, say there's chaos in Israel. They're having a revolution in Israel. This would be our time to do what?
Attack.
To attack, or at the very least, exert our independence. We're not going to be remember, we've already seen Moab and Edom have done the same thing when they rebelled against. This would be a great time to break the tie. And we're not going to be a client kingdom anymore. So Jehu is aware of that, right? Because what does he do? Now the king of Judah is gone, right? Because he killed him. What does Jehu do?
He met some relatives of the king of Judah.
Meets relatives of the king of Judah and does what?
Rested with his fathers.
What's that?
Rested with his
Yes,
fathers.
those people end up resting with their fathers. But they're not resting on cots or beds. How are they resting with their fathers?
They were killed.
They are slaughtered. He slaughters the family of Ahaziah from Judah. He slaughters the family of Ahab. What he has done is he has consolidated his power. He has shown Judah, you don't want to mess with me. If you think there's chaos and this is your time to break free, think again, because it's going to be bad if you do. So he's exerting power. Now, if he's really going to exert power, what's his next step? So he is politically, militarily taking charge. What's his next step? What does he do next?
Calls all the prophets of Baal.
He gets all the prophets of Baal together, right? And Ahab's religious establishment, right? Because he has contact with somebody who is zealous for the Lord. He has contact with somebody who is, serving the Lord God. So he calls all these prophets of Baal together, and what does he do with them? He kills them all. He slaughters the prophets of Baal and tears down and makes sure that only the prophets of Baal are killed and the followers of Baal are killed. So what has Jehu done in Israel? By the time we get to verse 28, what has Jehu done in Israel?
He destroyed the Baal worship.
He has destroyed every remnant of Ahab and his family. Destroyed the house of Ahab, slaughtered them. The allies Ahab would have in Judah, killed them, and now he has killed all the prophets. This is one bloody story. There's a lot of killing going on here, right? Mm-hmm. This is not a gentle story. So he has wiped out Baal. So this guy, Jehu, must be a great guy, right? He must be wonderful. He is the king Israel has been looking for.
But he's not so good.
What's the problem?
He's still worshiping the calves.
He is still worshiping Jeroboam's calves in Bethel and Dan. Why is he worshiping with the calves at Bethel and Dan? Why has he adopted Jeroboam's religion? Because he has to. He cannot go to Jerusalem to offer sacrifices. He cannot go to another country and rely on their God to protect Israel. So he goes back to the Lord cult in the north.
If he's got that kind of power and they're a client state, why doesn't he, if he knows better, why doesn't he just go back to Jerusalem?
Why wouldn't he? Now, you're telling me that's a political, but remember the writer of this story.
Is God. God told him.
Yeah, why would he not do that?
Not in God's.
Because it's not, that's right, it's not in God. And this person, and it's hard, since we're in it, it's hard to see this. The writer of this story, he knows what's going to happen. So he's not writing this down and then tomorrow he writes more down. He's writing this looking back. So he knows what's going to happen to Israel. Israel cannot be good, because what's going to happen to Israel? Ultimately, what's going to happen to Israel? It's going to be destroyed. It's going to be destroyed before Judah is destroyed. Israel's going to be destroyed. And why is Israel going to be destroyed? What's that? They don't obey. And what do they not obey?
The Lord.
They don't obey the Lord, and they don't worship. Remember, that's the thing. They don't worship the way they're supposed to worship.
Yeah.
So Israel is never going to worship the way it's supposed to worship. And even if you took that out, if he conquers Jerusalem and makes Jerusalem his capital, that's still, you're making a foreign country. It's like the United States conquering Mexico and making Mexico City the capital. Because it's a much better city. It's a bigger city. We're going to make Ottawa the capital now that we've conquered Canada, because I like cooler weather. It would be hard to sell. I mean, it's a hard thing to do. This is my country, protected by my God. And so to conquer a piece of yours so your God will protect me, becomes awkward. But I think the big reason is Israel is going to be punished. And so Israel cannot go back to worshiping at the temple. Israel's not going to do that. But they're worshiping the Lord. They're just not doing it in Jerusalem. And that's what the Lord wants. So Israel's dealt a hand it can't win. It can't win this hand. Now, Jehu does this. What is What is God's judgment of Jehu? How does God then judge? But he's gotten rid of the worship of Baal. That's gone. So what is God's judgment of Jehu?
He didn't really listen.
Yeah, he doesn't listen. He doesn't pay attention. And again, the only law that the writer really cares about is worship. It never talks about moral law, in any of the story. He talks about worship. But is Jehu going to be punished immediately? No. Is his family going to be punished?
Not right away.
Not right away. Now, when the Jehu dynasty ends, Israel ends. But we're not there yet. Okay, so Jehu has done something that is at least positive, in getting rid of the prophets of Baal, but he is not worshiping the Lord the way the Lord wants to be worshipped. And so what does the Lord start doing to Israel?
Reducing the size.
They start reducing the size of Israel. And where in particular is it being reduced? A lot of these places are east of the Jordan. Yeah, east of the Jordan. So who was taking this territory?
Syria.
Yeah, okay, good. Syria, Aram. Aram and Syria, same place. So this constant warfare, Aram is and we'll see Aram play a role a little bit later. So Israel is in decline. It's starting to be in decline. But understand you've got this constant warfare with someone else. Now, how does the Jehu story end?
He dies.
Okay, he dies. He rests with his fathers. If you want to know more about him, whatever. Find the book, read about it. There's a lot of other stuff. Now, so he's gone. But he reigned a long time. He reigned
28 years.
Ooh.
When it says reducing the size of Israel, does it mean land size or people size?
Well, it ends up being both. But particularly land.
Okay.
Land that Israel controls. And the areas that they talk about are to the north and the east, which means Aram is the one that's putting pressure. It's not Judah isn't taking land, but they're facing pressure from the north. Okay, so he ends up dying, but there's a new situation in chapter 11. What's going on in chapter 11?
How do you say that name? Athaliah?
Athaliah?
The mother saw that her son was dead. She did destroy the whole royal
Now,
family.
Athaliah is really interesting. Who is she? And her son is Ahaziah of Judah, right? Mm-hmm. Who is dead. Now, Judah, their kings, how were the kings of Judah different than the kings of Israel?
Because the women could come in?
Well, there's one huge, enormous difference between the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel. What's the definitive difference between the two kings? The line of David. The kings of Judah and the line of David. And there's no turnover. Israel has gone from one family to another. Now we got a new one. The family of Jehu is the new dynasty. Omri was before. And so they're constantly having new families take charge. This is a Davidic dynasty in Jerusalem. That doesn't change. The writer says there's a reason for that. Why does the dynasty in Judah never change? Because God doesn't want it. Remembers the promise he made to David, and therefore sticks. So there's a theological reason, according to the writer, why the family stays the same. Now, Ahaziah is in the line of David. He's a Davidic king. David would be his great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. But Athaliah, what is her situation? His mother, what is her situation? Well, we've seen her before, just mentioned. She is one of the daughters of King of Israel, of Ahab, who married the king of Judah, political alliance, which is what they did. So his mother is in the family of Ahab, not in the line of David. She has nothing to do with David other than she married into the family, right? Now, what does the writer tell us now that her son is gone and she is, what does she decide she's going to do?
Destroy the whole world.
She's going to destroy the royal family. Now, why would she want to destroy the royal family? Why would she want to do that?
Because her son died.
Well, her son died, but it's his family. It's his brothers, sisters. Why is she going to destroy his kids? Why is she going to destroy? She's not trying to save his children. She wants Ahaziah's kids dead. She wants to destroy Ahaziah's family. Why would she want to do that?
Because she blames him for...
Well, could be.
Is it to put one of her son?
Well, but her son by the king, Jehoshaphat, would be in that royal line. And she wants to kill all of them. What would be the most... I'll tell you, I'm an Occam's razor guy. I told that to somebody, a couple of weeks ago. Have you ever heard of Occam's razor? Now I'm going to kind of paraphrase it. It's an incredible useful. A razor is a principle, and there was a guy named Occam. So it's not it's based on a historical figure. Occam's razor is, and file this away. This may be the most important thing you'll hear today. Occam's razor is the most reasonable answer is generally the right one. The most reasonable answer is usually the right one. So Occam's razor, if you follow Occam's razors, you don't get excited about conspiracies. Because conspiracies tend to be remote. Could they happen? Yeah. Is it likely they happened? No, not likely. Occam's razor says what is most likely is usually right. Now, with Athaliah, what would be the most reasonable answer for why she wants to get rid of Ahaziah's entire family?
Because
She wants to be in charge.
She wants to be in charge. She wants to be in charge. Because she's got power now. And so she's going to eliminate all the family, which means she is now queen, right? She has power. She doesn't have to share it with anybody. So eliminate the family. She is the focus. Now, what would be the problem if that occurred?
She's not in the line of David.
She's not in the line of David. And because she's associated with Ahab and Jezebel, and we're going to find out, is that good according to this writer to be the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel? No, that is not good. So she wants to get rid of the family. So what ends up happening? So that's her plan. Wipe out the family, and then she's the only one standing.
here she goes in and gets a baby, a boy.
Ah.
A boy.
And the reason she could pull this off, evidently, is after Jehu killed a whole bunch of Ahaziah's family. When Jehu did it, the only ones left must be babies or small children. And so it would be pretty easy for her to just wipe out kids. And that's what she's planning to do. What happens to her plan?
He goes through.
What's that?
They hide the infant.
They end up hiding the infant, and where do they hide the infant?
The temple of the Lord.
They hide the infant in the temple. They hide, and we get Jehoiada. And who is he? Because he isn't king. He's a priest. He's a high priest.
Oh, I was going to say he's commander.
Yeah, he's a high priest. So Jehoiada, he ends up agreeing to hide the child. But he doesn't just hide the child. What does he do? How does he protect the child?
It's his own. Pretends he's his own.
Yeah, like his own. But what he does more than just puts the kid in the temple.
You mean a covenant with the guards?
Okay, he's got guards, right? So he surrounds a child with guards, right? To protect the king, this baby king, right? And if anybody messes with him, they're going to be in big trouble. What ends up happening to this little, and we're going to find out he's only, how old, later in the story, how old is this guy, Joash? He's 7 years old. He's just 7 years old. What do they end up, as he's in the temple being protected by Jehoiada? What do his guards, what do they do in the temple as they're protecting him?
Kind of anoint him, no?
They do. They recognize him as king. They proclaim him as king, right? Because that's what they call him. So Joash is now king, which is appropriate because he's in the Davidic line. So now we've got a king of David. But Athaliah, when she hears, is not going to be happy, right? Because this kind of throws a monkey wrench into her plans. So how does she react?
Accuses him of treason.
She goes to the temple, right? Sees that they have recognized him as king, Joash as king. She says, what? You have committed treason. And what does Jehoiada, what does he do? Jehoiada. Take her out, right? And what ends up happening to her?
They took her outside the temple and killed her.
And they kill her, right? So now she is going. What has now happened to Ahab's family?
They're done.
They're done. So Ahab, we close the book on the family of Ahab. We got Joash as king. And what is made between the Lord and this Joash new king?
A covenant.
Okay, a covenant is made. And when we hear covenant, we are thinking, this is
Promise,
good.
yeah.
So if a promise is made before God, and again, we've seen covenants before. And how do the people act on this covenant?
Went and tore down the temple there.
Okay, they end up tearing down the temple of Baal, and again, kill a lot of people, as they tear it down. What has occurred now? The dynasty in Jerusalem has been restored. Now, what kind of king is Joash? So Joash is king. His mother is gone, has exited the scene. She's dead. What kind of king is Joash? He is a great king. He rules how many years? 40. Now that's 40 is another number. 40 comes up a lot in the Bible. So that's sort of a sign of perfection, that he reigned for 40 years. That means he was incredibly good. And he does what the priest, Jehoiada, tells him to do, but he doesn't do what? People are still worshiping in the high places. Why are they worshiping in the high places?
They can't go to Jerusalem.
What's that?
They can't go to Jerusalem.
Well, they can't go with the Jerusalem. The temple's still functioning. They're still doing sacrifices. But remember, one of the things that we don't do now, that they did then, if I'm a farmer and I would like the soil to be fertile, if I'm planting, I follow techniques because they aren't stupid. They know what works and doesn't work. But I live in a world of mystery. I want to make sure these mysterious forces in nature are on my side. And so I do what's necessary. I do what everybody does. You appease God, the gods of the storms, so you don't send storms, and you sort of entice the goddess that results in fertility, and so you keep the high places open. And that's what he does, which is not right, but he's viewed as as a really, really good king. Now, there are two problems, and we'll finish this off now, because both of them are interesting. One that shows how good he is, and the other maybe how wise he is. What's going on with the temple? Joash is king. What's the condition of the temple?
Sad.
It is sad. It's sad. And sad in what way?
Needs repair.
Yeah, it's becoming run down. The temple is looking its age, and it's getting worn down. And what does he decide they're going to do with this temple?
Rebuild it?
They need to at the very least repair it, because it desperately needs repair, and so they've been raising money to repair. But what's the problem with the money that they're raising? They've been raising for years and years and years and years and years, but what's the problem? And this is shocking that this would happen. They've been raising money to repair the temple for years.
It's gone to the priest.
It's gone to the priests, and the priests have not used it to repair the temple. That's a shocking thing, that somebody would raise money and not use it for the purpose intended.
Well, why didn't the king or something do something to them for stealing the money?
Well, he certainly can, but he doesn't. Instead, what does he do? Which isn't a big, he just changes how the money is collected. He takes it out of the hands of the priests, and that evidently are not using it to build. Now, it doesn't say they're using it for themselves. They're just not using it to make the repairs on the temple that the temple needs. So they could be using it for good things, just not temple repairs. He makes sure that the money is going to be collected in a way that is designated. And in fact, he even talks, the writer even talks about how is that money going to be spent.
Secret gambling.
What's that?
Secret gambling.
Well, he's raising it by putting this trunk out by the altar where you can drop your money. But he's very specific in how the writer tells us how the money is used. How is the money not used? Because he tells us how it is not used.
Not used on the temple. So
Well, it's going to be used on the temple, but it's not going to be used
For the priest.
to buy stuff. They're not going to be buying gold fixtures and vessels and cups, and they're not going to spend the money on stuff. Which, remember, when the temple was built, there are chapters on the stuff they filled the temple. You know, the knickknacks in the temple. He's not going to spend any money on knickknacks, right? In fact, the money is going from that trunk to
The workers.
carpenters, masons, because the temple is falling apart. This is not the time to buy new candlesticks. Now is the time to do what? Yeah, fix the stupid roof instead of, we don't need any more ornaments in here. And that's what he ends up doing. And so he ends up rebuilding structurally the temple, okay? Which is a good thing, right? Because Joash is a good king, right? Now, what's the other problem he faces as king? So the temple's falling apart, he fixes it. What's the other problem?
King of Aram.
The king of Aram, Hazael, and remember, Hazael was anointed by Elisha, but he's causing all kinds of problems. And it says, in fact, he's even gone to Gath. You know where Gath is? We saw Gath before, way back in 2 Samuel. Gath is one of the cities of the Philistines. And they are far south and they are far west. So if Aram is messing around in Gath, they've extended their influence way beyond Israel. So Aram they've become the power. And they're in Gath, which the land of the Philistines borders Judah.
Oh.
And what does Hazael? What's the problem with Hazael? What is he, he's messing around with Gath. What does he decide he's going to do?
Protect Jerusalem.
He's going to attack Jerusalem. So, and understand, a lot of this is raiding. You know, you're not holding land, you're just raiding. So he's going to attack Jerusalem. And what does Joash do? Which kind of tells us the military condition of Judah, or maybe the status of Judah in respect to a people like Aram, the Arameans. What does the king of Judah decide he's going to do?
He tries to bribe
Yeah, he's going to strip down anything of value in the temple.
in the temple.
You know, he's going to take out, remember they've done it before. He's taking silver, he's taking gold, he's taking stuff that was Jehoshaphat put back in, he's taking out, putting it in bags and doing what with it?
Send it to Hazael.
Hazael, which tells us that Hazael is just raiding. You know, he's not looking to conquer and hold land, to tax. He just wants to go through and strip the land of anything of value and then go home. And so what they do is they do what ancient people did. You don't have to do this. You don't have to attack us. We're gonna
Give it to you.
you're gonna attack us so you can steal all our silver and gold. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll give it to you. Just don't besiege us. Don't make us eat one another. You know, don't put us through that. You can have everything we got. Here it is. And that's what he does. And Hazael does what? He takes it and he goes home. And this is not necessarily a bad thing. I think this is presented to show wisdom, but also, you know, relative weakness. Judah's just not strong enough to stand up and fight. If they stood up and fought, they were going to lose. They were going to lose. So, what happens to Joash? Of course. What happens to all of us?
He died.
When he dies, his story is found in the books of the kings of Judah, and he is gone, and he is followed by his son. All right, so we've got, where are we now in this story? Where are we in the story of Judah and Israel? Just how would you summarize where we are right now as we leave chapter 12 of 2 Kings?
Well, they destroyed Israel and...
Okay, Israel is in trouble.
Yes.
Okay, Israel's in trouble. It's getting smaller and weaker. Okay, what else? And Israel, as opposed to Judah, but Judah is also not in great shape. You know, clearly they aren't able to stand up. Okay, what else can we say?
All of the chores given to Elijah have been completed.
So, which is good because Elisha is done. Yeah, we don't see him. He has exited the scene. So those three things that God, which tells us too that God is
In control.
in control. This is God's story. God is pushing this story, even though we say, "Oh my gosh, how many people died? How many people died in what we looked at today?
What?
Lots of people died. Guilty people."
Not all of them.
You know, he's killing everybody in the family. You know, all
There
the
are a lot of innocents.
yeah, the 70 people in the family.
The children and...
Okay, it's rough. But who's driving the story?
God.
God is driving this story. So we can say God is accomplishing what God is setting out to do. We know that politically, both Israel and Judah are on the weak side, although Jehu is kind of cleaning things up a little bit, up north a little bit. Joash has cleaned it up a lot down south. What might we expect to happen in the future as we leave chapter 12 and move into 13? What might we expect to see?
the king, what's his name, his son succeeded him as king.
Okay.
What he's going to do.
We're going to see what he's going to do as king of Judah. We're going to see what a new king in Israel is going to do. Because remember, God said to Jehu, you got four sons. So 4 generations are going to be able to lead Israel. I'm going to have 4. So we know Israel's going to be around for a while. But everybody is kind of in a little bit of decline. So that's where we are. Again, this is God's story, not just. But as somebody who's interested in history, this is kind of cool. As you can see, what's happening behind the scenes as the writer shapes into a theological story.
And through all of this, there's so many kings and so many of them being killed, so that other kings can, take their place. It's amazing how many, in the lines of kings.
Right. Well, and you look, and this is not unusual at all historically, that you have dynasties that rise and are constantly falling. Families that rule and then are overthrown, and are replaced by another line. And that's something that happens. That's what we see. It's not happening in the south, but it certainly is in the north, in Israel. So, but this is still God's story. This is God's story. Any questions?
No, but when you brought up Jezebel and her makeup,
Yeah.
okay, that made me think, I want to be cremated, okay?
Okay.
Should I have my makeup on or not?
Well, I'm gonna, Patty. If you told me your plan was to be eaten by dogs, that was your plan. When I go, I'd like you to get dogs to eat me. I would say probably makeup doesn't matter.
Okay.
But if you're being cremated, I think that makeup would be fine. And what's really nice is it really doesn't matter whether it's flammable or not.
Okay.
So you can, you can use any kind of makeup that you want.
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking that I'm making a theological
Even
interpretation.
if it's fireproof.
Well, I'll tell you, when they put your body in that furnace, I don't think that fireproof makeup is going to make one pin a day.
Maybe my whole body will be burned up and my face will still be.
It could be.
You'll meet
Yeah, Patty, that's probably what's going to happen.
you'll meet God with all your makeup on.
Well, I remember I was, and it made sense. I was doing a funeral, and it's very interesting when you do funerals, ministers do funerals, because we're with the funeral director in the car, and we're going to the cemetery, and so we're talking. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're talking in the car, and these guys because you do a lot of work with them, so And we were talking about cremation. I don't know why this wasn't a cremation, but I was talking about cremation. And I don't know, I must have said something. He said, well, you realize, I must have used the word ash. He said, you realize there's no ash. There's no ash. There remains on ashes. And I said, what? He says, there are no ashes. Yeah. He says the ash is from soft tissue, and the soft tissue is gone. There's nothing but bones. And he says, well, I said, well, what's in the body? He says, it's ground. That's what we do. We grind the bones, and those are the cremains. He says there is no ash among the cremains because that's vaporized. Boom.
But you
that's
don't
gone.
really go around and say, this is the bones of my...
Yeah, you don't say that. You say cremains. But he says that's what it is. It's the calcium in the bone. That's the only thing.
And some of it's amazing how some of it actually lives through that. I mean, it surrounds the bone.
Oh yeah. It just shows what bone is.
Yeah.
How sturdy that is. And so we talked about that for a while. I don't know. I hope it doesn't bother you. It doesn't bother me. I figured it had to be something like that.
Yeah. So I want to use cremated.
Yeah, that's how I plan on being cremated.
What do we do next time?
13 beginning of 13 through 15:7. And we're going to be looking at the dynasty. We're still going to be spending a lot of time in the north. We're going to be looking at what's happening with Jehu's family. The last dynasty in Israel. Last Israel dynasty. Okay, let's have a word of prayer. Lord God, thank you so much for giving us this time together. Thank you for these stories. You know, sometimes these stories make at least me personally, Lord, make me feel a little uncomfortable because a lot of people end up dying in the stories. Help us, and certainly help me, see beyond that, and so that I can appreciate the fact that you are in control, that you are moving this story to a point that ultimately will bring glory to you. Also remind us all that our behaviors have consequences. And if we choose to obey you and be the people you created and called us to be, our lives will probably be better than if we choose something else. So just remind us to be responsive and obedient to you. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen.